This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined by David Hughes. Dave, how are we doing this week?
I'm very good, thanks Josh. Yeah, you know what, I have accidentally got that much to add for the change. Just I'm mellow and steady.
I'm not sure if you noticed, but I think my wig is starting to reach caveman level.
Yeah, I did notice, to be honest. I just was waiting for you to bring it up. I still can't believe you're waiting to the 20 seconds. I know you're getting what was it?
It wasn't my idea. I consulted with various people and they advised me. So if anything goes wrong, if I end up with like a full-on Mohamed Salah wig, I'll have to just blame other people, mate. Hopefully the listeners not the listeners, but hopefully the viewers bear with me through it.
I thought maybe you were just holding out for Kelleher's barber because he's playing well at the moment and you want to be associated with that.
I'm hoping to get in at the same time as Kelleher. I can have a chat with him about the podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
He played this week. We played Wolves. We're going to look back at that game. And we're going to look ahead to Fulham. Remains to be seen if he'll play in that. I've saw a few rumours that Alisson could be back. But the Wolves game, Dave, did you attend?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, you know, it was I predicted quite a tight game, didn't we, beforehand? But I have to say, you know, I thought it was a really good performance by Liverpool. It was a controlling and dominant win. Can't really think of any players who had a bad game on the night. And I was really surprised by. This isn't something we really touch on, but then it does kind of come under our remit a little bit because we have pointed out before that it's not just about numbers with us. I was surprised about the impact of the fans in the stadium. Yeah. Because although there was only 2,000, you'll be surprised how much that noise echoes around the stadium. And it definitely sounds like there's more in there when you're playing. And it does, for me, definitely give some sort of psychological edge, both in favour of the home side, Liverpool, and then impact the away side a little bit. I think it's going to be interesting to watch home and away form over these next couple of months with fans coming back in.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a quote before from Leander Dendoncker, and I think he said something along the lines of because of the noise that the Liverpool fans created on the day, it felt like there was about 15,000 of them as opposed to 2,000. So obviously, with it being Anfield and things like that, probably does have an impact on things. And I'm not actually sure how Liverpool have got on this season when it comes to overperforming in attack. But this was a fair overperformance when you look at the expected goals, and it's difficult to attain how much of an overperformance like that can be down to just fans willing you on to do well, almost like, you know, the cop kind of sucking the ball into the net almost sort of thing. So, you know, it's worth keeping an eye on. But yeah, it was quite an easy day, surprisingly. Obviously a 4-0 win, which is quite dominant. I think we mentioned that West Ham have done that to Wolves this season, but other than that, they very rarely seem to get beat by more than one goal, really. But the expected goals, I was quite surprised by. I mean, I watched the game firmly as a fan on the day, so I wasn't really thinking too much on the analytical side, but it did feel like a comfortable win. It did feel like a deserved win. But if you look at the XG, it does look a lot tighter. Like if you'd have shown me these numbers now that I'm going to reel off before the game, if you'd have showed me these numbers last week when we previewed the game, I'd have been like, oh yeah, spot on. Obviously Liverpool posted 1.2 expected goals, Wolves 0.5, Liverpool 11 shots to 9, 6 shots on target to 3. That does look a lot closer to a 1-0 win, a 2-1 win. Obviously Liverpool end up scoring 4.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're kind of right. It's something I was just about to say. Then I suppose what we've got to consider is the own goal as well. Obviously, that wouldn't have been that wouldn't been picked up on most metrics, would it? Because it wasn't. Point, yeah. Obviously, if that kind of goes to because what I thought was really interesting by that goal, by the way, was Salah, for me, definitely could get there, and it's almost like he leaves it for Mane to finish, which I thought was really interesting because we've often talked about Salah being quite driven, focused on his own goal tally. He's not in a negative way; that's just how he is. He's a kind of output player, isn't he? I thought it was interesting that for me, he definitely leaves it for Mane, but if Mane gets on the end of that, that's going to have quite a high XG and probably boost that number. But yeah, I think in terms of, the scoreline probably flatters things from a chance creation perspective. But I think from a performance and dominance perspective, it does kind of reflect the game, if that makes sense, Josh.
Yeah, it didn't really ever feel like Liverpool were, under the cosh. Never felt like Liverpool was struggling too much. I think Kelleher was brought in to make one or two saves, but they weren't like really well beaten saves. And I felt like maybe from a Liverpool perspective, maybe we had a few little breaks that didn't end up resulting in shots. Obviously, you mentioned the Mane, the own goal type thing. I agree with you, by the way, when you said I think Salah could have got it. But I think obviously by that point, Salah's got a goal, he's got an assist. So, uncharacteristically, he left it for his teammates, who I do think he spotted in the left of his vision. But obviously ended up going in as an own goal. Throughout the game, Roberto Firmino is a player that I picked up on as being, back in the mould of what we expect from him, sort of thing. Still doing his maverick, weird, unorthodox plays, but also doing a lot of what makes him such a valuable player for Liverpool.
Yeah, it was probably a performance that wouldn't necessarily stand out hugely in the quantifiable stuff. But there was just a lot of really nice touches. I thought distribution was brilliant, and movement off the ball as well was first class. I have to say, by the way, can you remember that pass in the first half where he kind of does like a karate scissor kick?
Yeah.
It was phenomenal, wasn't it? Into the path of Mane. Like, I remember as he was in it thinking, is he going to try this? And I thought it's going to fly out, and it was just inch perfect. It was it felt like he was playing with confidence a little bit. I don't know if that's because he scored recently, but a confident version of Firmino is a really enjoyable player to watch.
Yeah, it did. I mean, the pass that you're on about there, that was what I was thinking of when I just said about his maverick plays and stuff like that. He's actually celebrated goals with that same action. So to go and celebrate a goal with an action and then end up using that as a way to execute a pass, I think pretty much sums him up. But I think one of the reasons he's so valuable, obviously people talk about what he offers outside goals and stuff like that, but I think one of the reasons he's so valuable is because Liverpool have so many risk takers in that team, specifically in and around the final third. You've got Salah, Mane, Robertson, Trent, Henderson takes a fair few risks on the ball. So Kate is the same. So I think having a player who's deployed high up the field, but maybe doesn't take those risks and kind of, I've said this before plenty of times, he's kind of the glue guy, mate, for me. He kind of offers the glue in around a gang of risk takers, really. And I think it allows Liverpool to sustain pressure high up the field. It allows Liverpool to move the pitch smoothly. Lallana did a little bit of this for Liverpool last season, just coming on, just providing a bit of glue, because Liverpool are so inclined to take risks high up the field that sometimes, if the bad risks or if we fail to back them up once the ball falls loose and stuff like that, it can result in Liverpool lacking control, really. But I think when Firmino's like this, he does just kind of knit things together. I know it's quite a cliche line for like a number 10 type player, but I do think that that's one of his main perks, just how he kind of, he just provides the cement in between Liverpool's, attack sort of thing, to knit everything together, to make everything one. And it was good to see him back doing that.
Yeah, I think he reads the game, reads attacks really well, which I guess comes with being integrated in this attacking system for several years now. Really, he's been there pretty much it's the entirety of Klopp's time, hasn't he? He's been there, and I think what he just does really well is beyond those kind of actions with the ball. he just seems to be able to know exactly where to be as certain attacking sequences are building. He knows when to kind of drop in, or I mean, sometimes I was watching him last night, and you see him in like the left back position. You see Robertson pushing up as like a winger. You might see whoever's number 8 kind of almost taking up his position. He's dropping in as like a left back, and you don't really see any number 9 doing that. Okay, he's more of a number 10 as he plays, but I just think for the defending side, and don't forget, Wolves are really good without the ball. For a defending team, it must be so difficult to kind of track where he's going, what he's doing next, and then whilst you're preoccupied trying to work that out, which players are then occupying the spaces that he's left in behind. It's such a fluid system, and I don't think there's many players who could kind of play that role in his place. Like, so many people have tried to, when they've talked about, not so much now because Arsenal's struggling, but when teams have talked about Arteta, Arsenal, they try to compare with Liverpool's front 3 at times and talk about Lacazette being like a Firmino role, but I just think it's such a hard role to replicate, and you just can't compare the two.
Yeah, I think, funnily enough, I think the player who's probably closest to it at the minute in the Premier League is probably Kane. I think Kane has developed in a way whereby tactically, with Mourinho getting rid of Dele Alli, so there's no one in the 10 space, and playing 2 wide forwards who are inclined to run in behind. That it's encouraged Kane to drop really, really deep. He's encouraging Kane to, defend set pieces, drop back when Spurs don't have the ball, win fouls and all stuff like that. So it's probably something we'll talk about more, and I'll probably write about it, to be honest, when Liverpool face Spurs, which is quite soon, I think.
Next week or so. Yeah.
So I think we'll preview that one next week rather than this week. But yeah, I think Bob was back on his form. Another player that I want to touch on is Wijnaldum. He played 90 minutes again, and he just seems to be a bit of a cyborg, to be honest. Because certain players in Liverpool's squad have played virtually every game. Like Andy Robertson comes to mind, but Andy Robertson's had at least 2 weeks now whereby he's been flagged as a potential doubt. Wijnaldum is playing every week, including for his country. 90 minutes in most cases. And he never even seems to be a doubt. You never even hear of like, Wijnaldum's got a little niggle. He's just consistently available every single week. And when he does play, he's in terms of being reliable to be available, he's equally reliable when he actually takes the field as well. When in terms of how he plays, he's just an all round one of those players that you can just really count on.
Yeah, you can basically put him anywhere across the midfield, can't you? Knowing that he'll perform. It might not always be blockbuster performances, but as we've said so many times now, it's not new information. That's as a result of the role he's given. It's not a lack of capacity or ability. He just never seems to have a bad game. He might have a 7 out of 10 game every now and again, but I do wonder just how much of that comes down to kind of playing an unremarkable role if he's kind of opening the floor for the more attack-minded players. But yeah, his availability is unbelievable, and this is something I was really banging on about in the summer when so many seemed so keen to get rid of him. Really, bring Thiago in when it looked like it was going to have to be a like for like. There was just such this like happiness or willingness to let Wijnaldum go out the door, and it just seemed bizarre to me because I appreciate Thiago was a fantastic player, but the kind of reliable profile you get from Wijnaldum is almost unrivaled. And then on top of that, he just produces stuff like that goal. Like, I was laughing as just after that goal went in, I said to the person next to me, it's kind of like Wolves were treating Wijnaldum in that moment as they were backing off, like he was a Sissoko or someone. And used Sissoko because he's kind of like a defensive midfielder. He's really good at his job. But we've seen a couple of times, and there was an example at Anfield about 18 months ago where Sissoko's running in on goal, and Van Dijk was just happy to open the floor for him because he knew he couldn't really do anything in the final third. You could see Sissoko just trying to lay it off to, I think it was Son on his right, and Van Dijk ends up performing like a great piece of defending. And it felt like they were doing that to Wijnaldum yesterday. They were almost happy for him to keep carrying it forwards. And it just made me laugh because I thought it's like they didn't understand who's coming towards them here. Like they focus more on the role he's playing rather than the actual ability he has, because he's a fantastic scorer when he needs to be, and he rightfully punished them by putting it in the top corner.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think he's one of the most underrated players that Liverpool have had over Klopp's period, without doubt. Funnily enough, interesting little stat. Since he joined Liverpool in the Premier League, that is his furthest goal.
How far was it?
It wasn't that far. It was right on the edge of the box, but that's the furthest goal he scored for Liverpool in the Premier League. Yeah, what I'm looking at here doesn't actually say. I'm just looking at his goal map in the Premier League since I have Liverpool. He was one other goal against Sheffield United from outside the box. You remember it? At Bramall Lane when it rolled Dean Henderson. That's the only other goal Wijnaldum scored for Liverpool in the Premier League from outside the area. But no, I think you're spot on. I think he's a special player, and I think I'd seen an interview a few weeks ago. It might have been a few days ago actually. Jamal Lascelles, and they asked Lascelles who's the best player you've played with, and he said Wijnaldum. And he said the reason behind that just he's pure ability was the words he said. And I think it comes across when he's playing for Liverpool and stuff, and then when he goes and plays a completely different role for Holland to an equally impressive standard. He's just a really complete footballer with not too many weaknesses, and kind of in the total football mould when it comes to being an attacker with the ball and a defender without it, and contributing to all phases of play and stuff like that. But a few days ago, I was speaking to someone who mentioned about his contract, and this wasn't like a diehard fan or anything like that. But when they found out that his contract was running up at the end of the season, they were like, why? They couldn't really get their heads around why he performs every week for Liverpool. Obviously, we don't know the details as to why it hasn't been signed yet. We don't know if Wijnaldum just doesn't want to sign because he wants a new challenge. But from the perspective of the club, maybe we should provide a bit of insight into why, from a squad building perspective, recruitment, a 30-year-old player getting a contract like this is a tricky one for the club, isn't it?
Yeah. Just turned 30, didn't he, last month? And it is difficult because you wonder how many of his best years ahead of them. Now, it's not to say that he's going to fall off a cliff performance-wise, because if you look at Milner, a perfect professional, he's still doing a job for Liverpool now. But you've just really kind of hit the nail on the head, and you're talking about, squad building wise. And do you look at maybe someone like Jones coming through, who's his kind of, okay, they're not like for like as such, but in a lot of ways they kind of are as well in what they offer or what they can offer. I think maybe Wijnaldum's at this stage a little bit, better without the ball. But that's it. You wonder how much. I'm not saying Wijnaldum. I mean, we don't know what kind of money Wijnaldum would be asking for, but if there's an offer on the table to go abroad and get his kind of maybe last big paycheck as a player, he'd still be able to go to a top European side. You might look at this and think, he's had a fantastic time at Anfield. He's won 2 of the biggest trophies you can win in the Premier League and Champions League. From that point of view, there's little left to achieve except obviously trying to win them again. So he may just be looking at it from a personal point of view and think, new challenge, more money, because I don't think Liverpool are going to throw a lot of money at him because of his age. And so I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be one of them where both parties may wish for the deal to be done, but it just won't be right enough for both sides to actually do the deal, and that might result in them parting ways at the end of the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one because obviously when we signed him, he come from the Championship, obviously just been relegated, moving up to Liverpool, who weren't in the current mould at the time. I don't think he'll be on too much a week, to be honest. Obviously, with this probably being the last contract of his career, he'll want to get a boost on that, despite him turning 30. So,
and that's not money grabbing, is it? By the way, just before you carry on, that's not money grabbing. It makes sense.
Yeah, it happens in football. You know, it's what a lot of footballers do. I mean, if you look at, say, for example, Christian Eriksen, obviously he did it in a bit of a saltier way, maybe. But with it being probably one of the last contracts of his career, players want a boost. Players want a boost from this sort of thing. And I think, say, for example, Wijnaldum is on, just for argument's sake, say he's on 80 grand a year. And he recognises what he's done for this club over the period of a few years. Recognises his status in the team as in playing every week. And he wants a boost to 130, 150 grand a week. Although, to a degree, that makes sense considering his status in the squad. Given his age, given that he's run out of contract, he's probably going to be signing at least 3 years. I'd be surprised if he signs anything 2 or below. So you're then dedicating yourself as a club to a player who's going to become 33 eventually, earning around 150 grand a week. By that point, will he still be playing every week? Will you be getting 150 grand a week's worth out of him on the field? And that's what a lot of teams in the Premier League specifically tend to get wrong. I think Arsenal comes to mind, to be honest. If you think of Ozil, Ozil got this big deal, 300 odd grand a week, massive deal. He's now in his 30s, he's not playing at all. Arsenal are just completely eating that contract. And the only way to get rid of him, really, is to sell him for a massive hit or to, cancel his contract, which it involves paying him out. So, generally, when a player gets into his 30s, it does become tricky from a recruitment perspective. It's got to make sense from the club's perspective to keep him going on the wage that he's on. It's got to be value in it, in terms of what you're paying him, translating onto the field. And I just mentioned there about Curtis Jones. Obviously, he's keeping up a squad position there. So it is tricky. I do think Liverpool will have offered him something, but I'd be surprised if it's above 100 grand, to be honest.
What would you do if you were in charge?
It's a tricky one. I think I'd be doing what I can to keep him, to be honest, because I think certain players you can maybe look at when they're around 33, and you just already think he'll be finished by that point. I think Wijnaldum, with him showing how robust he is during this period, I think he will still be quite a reliable figure around that age. Still be available. Doesn't pick up injuries, does he?
No.
Whether he'll be contributing 150 grand's worth of actions on the pitch every week remains to be seen. What about yourself? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm trying to weigh up whether you could potentially do like a, because I think you could definitely get what you're getting now next season from him as well. Reliable, good output on the pitch. So if there's a way you could kind of meet his demands for the year, but then have some sort of contract break where there's a renegotiation process. But I think the issue is if someone's on the table to his representative saying, we'll give you, use that figure you used, 130,000, and we'll offer you a 3-year contract, or he stays with Liverpool and gets it for only 12 months and he doesn't really know what comes after that. I think you're inclined to just make the move, aren't you, and get that guaranteed sum for 3 years. So I'm with you. I think certainly for the next 12, 18 months, you'd want him tied down. Beyond that, there's no blueprint really, is there, for players at 30 onwards, because it just seems to be so varied in what actually happens with them performance-wise. Sometimes you get a Milner, and then other times you see players fall off a cliff. So it is really difficult to predict. But I think from a Liverpool perspective, it'd be a shame if he went at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one of the ways in which clubs tend to get around this is obviously they start giving contracts out based on number of appearances and things like that. And, rather than being a strict wage every week, a player's contract becomes more incentive based. And it just remains to be seen whether some players are willing to accept that, really. I think if you look at Wijnaldum's case, he's now a completely different player in terms of stature now compared to what he was when he came to Anfield. He's now a European champion. He's an English champion. There's a fair amount of teams throughout Europe he'd probably start for, including at the top of the game, the likes of Bayern Munich and teams like that. He's such a reliable player. When he gets in a team and gets a slot, he's difficult. He's going to be difficult to oust, for any player who's kind of in and out sort of thing. So I can see him starting for a lot of teams, and obviously if he did sign for another club, massive sign-on fee and all that sort of stuff, especially if it's a free transfer. So it's just a tricky one. I would like him to stay. I do think he goes against some of the general rules of over 30-year-old players, largely because of his injury record is just flawless. And I think he's been playing top-level elite football from an early age. I think he was, from a teenager, around the age of like 17, 18, I think he was straight in playing first-team football, and he hasn't really came out since. No. But it is just a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I mean, if he does go, he's had a fairly good time on Merseyside, hasn't he? So, yeah, I'm sure he'll be waved off with plenty of good memories. But there's still a while to go this year.
Just looking at his deal.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at his deal. Put it this way: it's no coincidence that as a 25-year-old, Liverpool signed him on a 5-year contract, because at the end of that 5-year contract, he will reach the age of 30, and that kind of is an ideal time, really ideal position for a club to then assess what the situation is, sort of thing, with the player. Whether it's time to let him go, whether he's worth keeping, what value he's offering, whether you can sell him maybe at the age of 28 with 2 years left on his deal, all that sort of stuff. So there's more that comes into it usually with contract than what meets the eye. It's not just a case of, does he want to stay at Liverpool? Why wouldn't he want to stay? Always greedy, asking for more money or whatever. Sometimes, from a recruitment perspective, squad building and stuff, there's lots that you've got to consider.
Yeah, both for the player and the club.
Yeah. So, I mean, just before we move on, if you was to guess what happens there, I mean, have you got any thoughts?
I mean, if he goes on as a kind of a season that he's had so far, he might get a 12-month extension. He might just think, I want to stay here one more year. But the way I feel right now, based on the conversation we've just had, I think he'll probably go, just for the reasons we said. I think Liverpool will probably have a kind of top end that they're willing to offer, even though they do really. I'm sure Klopp loves him. I'm sure he's well liked around the club. I think they'll have a figure that they're willing to pay. It might be it probably will be less than what he can get offered elsewhere. He can probably go to another really big side in Europe and kind of play the next few years still at the elite level, but earning a guaranteed sum. Because you don't want he won't take like a pay-per-play type deal, would he? Because, well, why would you if you've got guaranteed funds on there? Because if he was to pick up a big injury, he wouldn't get paid. So for me, I just think he's probably gonna move on in the summer.
Yeah, I do as well, sadly. I think obviously when Liverpool bought him in 2015, I think it was, 2016 for 25 million. Obviously, generally Liverpool want to get a return on player value, and they don't just want to let a player leave for free. But I think if you look at that, Liverpool have had Wijnaldum for 5 years there. For 25 million, you've probably got your money's worth there without needing to sell them to recoup anything.
Easily.
So I think it's one of them that you kind of just can't accept as a free transfer if it does happen. I don't want to personally. I would like him to stay, especially looking at how valuable he's going to be and has been already in the coronavirus period with the lack of preparation, lack of recovery time and stuff. But if I was to put my money on something, I would probably say I think he might leave, but if he does, I hope he gets a proper send off, because I've seen people very frustratingly comparing it to Emre Can, and it really does me head in, because it's not even close. Emre Can, for me, wanted to spend his peak years away from Liverpool, because he, in my opinion, and based on what I've seen and what he said and stuff, I think he thought he was deserving of a higher level. Wijnaldum spent his peak years at Anfield. It's different. So, whatever happens there, whatever he decides to do, good luck to him.
Yeah, I agree.
And then finally, on the Wolves thing, we mentioned it last week. I don't really want to go on about it too much, because I do like him as a player, but I think Coady struggled, didn't
he? Yeah, it kind of obviously makes an error, which everybody does. It's not getting us back too much, but he makes a really big error. Kind of handing the first goal to Liverpool, and yeah, it was just a tough game. And as I said, I think the system that they play suits him when he's all the players in front of him. I don't think he's a player who suits it going in behind. And yeah, if anybody had any doubts, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was watching, thinking he is a solid defender. Thought he had a good first 15, 20 minutes, but yeah, I just don't think he suits Liverpool.
No, I mean, surprisingly, they went for a back four, which we previewed, but didn't really think would happen. And I do think he's more exposed in a back four. I think his long diagonal passes to usually the wing backs become less effective, because you're not playing wing backs, you're playing full backs. So it wasn't just a mistake. He gave the ball away a few times as well, and just didn't really seem comfortable with the support around him. But I just thought it was something probably to point on, because in our opinions, although he's a good player, clearly a good personality and stuff, he's not suited to Klopp's game. And maybe this was a bit of evidence as to why.
Just on that, I was laughing to myself, thinking, I wonder if he'll try and bat it off like he's not bothered, but I wonder if it's hurting a little bit, getting booed by your boyhood club fans as well, because obviously he went down for that. That was a bad one, but he went down, dived on for that penalty, didn't he? Rightly overturned, and he got plenty of stick then for the rest of the game. And obviously, as a big boyhood Liverpool fan, that might have stung a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I felt a bit sorry for him, because obviously he gave first goal. First goal was his fault. Then he gets an opportunity to steal a penalty. He takes the opportunity, probably because he's just give a goal away at the opposite end. And when it comes to the actual dive, obviously it looks awful, but I do think he's anticipating getting volleyed by Mane. I think he's on his way down as he sees Mane attempting an overhead kick in his own penalty box. So I think once Mane pulls out, it just makes him look like a cheat. So
yeah,
it just wasn't a great game for him, was it?
No. I know we're probably going to move on in a sec, but just before we do, quick word on Kelleher.
Yeah, another strong performance. I think he's probably better with his feet than we give him credit for last week against Ajax. I thought that was maybe just a line from Klopp to get him in, but initially against Ajax, that is. But he does genuinely seem really composed with the ball at his feet. Quite a capable contributor and stuff. And when it comes to specifically his decision making, I like his decisions. He doesn't make bad decisions. Adrian does. I know you sent me a message during the game, didn't you? About him?
Yeah. Just basically, as you said there, I just thought his decision making was really good. Comes out. He come out at the right time. There's two that I can think of, where there's one where he comes out and catches it in the air. And it isn't an easy catch because it's right behind him. He's stretching. And it's one of them where you can see lesser keepers sometimes fall down and spill it on the drop, but he doesn't do it, holds it well. And then there's another one where it was curled in and he comes off and punches it away for the corner. But there was two Wolves players coming in behind. And it's one of them, if he misses that, it's going to be a guaranteed goal against. And yeah, I don't think obviously the chip as well, we done really well against Podence's chip. And that was still at 0-0, 16 minutes gone. If you can see there, it could have been a different game. But I just feel like, although he wasn't getting bombarded all night, he's just very composed, makes the right decisions. And just on that passing point, I think I mentioned this in a piece I did last week, But I think it's a reminder why there's a benefit of having the academy fully aligned with the first team, because if you compare him to Adrian, who, no disrespect to Adrian, but he hasn't played at any great clubs, has he? He's been at like medial sides clubs like West Ham's and Real Betis, those type of clubs. He's never been at like the truly like top end like Liverpool are at the moment. So he's never really had that kind of need to play a possession based game. Whereas if you think of Kelleher, he's come through the academy and he's been reared to play that way, to play out from the back, to be composed in possession. And it just made it so much easier for him to kind of scale that up into the first team. And yeah, I actually do believe Klopp wasn't just kind of feeding his lines. I think he sees him as the better keeper with the ball at his feet, and that's why he's been using him.
Even without the ball at his feet, though, I think he's appeared the better goalkeeper overall. He's made every save he's been called upon to make, although none of them have been that tough, I don't think. But in between that, in between his use of the ball and the saves he's making, just his decisions, as we've mentioned, coming and catching, coming and punching, when to come, when not to come, just good decisions. It's reassuring for the whole defensive line, really. I think he would be unfortunate to come out the side for Fulham, but to be honest, I'd look at him now as firmly second choice. Obviously, Alan gets injured a fair bit, sadly. Fair bit for a goalkeeper. So when he does, I'd have no bones about bringing Kelleher back in, and obviously we've got Midtjylland midweek. I'd play Kelleher in that. The FA Cup, I think, is still to come. I'd play Kelleher in that as well. But yeah, for the Fulham game, it looks like Alisson could be back in goal. But we might not need him because this is a game that I would expect Liverpool to do quite well in. I'm quite confident going into this.
Yeah, I am. I think, although Fulham showed signs of life in recent weeks, I think that City game was a kind of reminder what to expect when they come against the kind of elite sides of the division. And I know that only finished 2-0, but it was very one-sided. And yeah, I just cannot see anything but Liverpool win here. I know we normally leave predictions to the end, but we'll talk about why we can't see anything more.
Yeah, I've watched Fulham a fair bit this season, actually. I watched them against Arsenal on the opening day. I think that might have been. I watched them against City this weekend. I watched them against Leicester last weekend.
Everton, maybe?
The Everton game. What score was that one? Oh, yeah, Everton, yeah.
3-2 it was, but they were much better second half.
Yeah, they have definitely improved. Initially against Arsenal, they looked horrible. They looked bad. They had a centre-half playing who I don't think I've seen since he played. Michael Hector, I think.
Yeah, okay.
If you get any time spare today, go on Wisecout and look at Michael Hector's actions against Arsenal. Just look at his highlight reel, and it's
okay. Yeah, I'll do that after this.
Unbelievable! Like, it's the worst game I've ever seen a Premier League player have. But he's not playing since. They brought in Joachim Andersen, I think is maybe how you say it, Joaquin Andersen. I was familiar with him, actually. Swedish, I think he is. Playing
with that name.
Yeah, playing at Sampdoria at the time. But before he moved to Sampdoria, I think he was getting linked with Arsenal. He's okay. He's a good, decent player, and I think they've integrated a centre half next to him. I'm not sure his name is. I know it begins with an A, but he's young, tall. Looks like a good player.
And just quickly, Josh, our producer has flagged here as we're talking that Fulham fans apparently call him Hector Virgil van Mike. But then he's caveated saying, but that was before the Arsenal game.
Well, that must purely be down to his appearance then, because it's certainly not to do with his footballing ability. Where was I then? I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Go on.
But yeah, I think. Well, I can't even remember what I was saying. What was I on about there?
I think we were just talking about the defence, and they've improved a little bit. They've made some changes.
Yeah, no, the young other centre half that they brought in alongside Anderson looks good. And they've got, I think it's Anthony Robinson at left back.
Yeah.
He looks decent. And
Yeah.
then right back, I'm not sure who'd have been playing right back recently, but initially at the start of the season, I think it was like Dennis Odoi and players like this. But they come across early on a little bit in the mould of maybe Norwich, just a bit naive, a bit idealistic, not particularly practical when it comes to applying your principles in the Premier League to get results. And they just looked awful. But past 2 weeks, I think they've applied the whole sitting back, soaking pressure and counter-attacking quite well. Whereas earlier in the season, they were trying to play, Arsenal at their own game by possession football and all that sort of stuff. Just didn't work.
Yeah. Weirdly, I might have egg on my face. This is bold, but I've got a feeling he might end up staying up. I know, but and we'll see how it goes. But I just fancy them to have a better second half of the season. I feel like Parker's learning, but they do seem to. I don't know. Let's wait and see. I'll be first to flag this at the end of the year if they do, but I'll be making sure Guy deletes it if they go right down. But just want to watch. But yeah, they have some good players, especially you talked about Anthony Robertson there. Obviously, he was meant to be going to AC Milan last year for 10 million from Wigan, and the deal fell through for a reason I'm still not sure. I think he failed a medical or something was wrong with the paperwork, which would have been a blow if you can imagine going from Wigan to AC Milan. But he still got a decent move to the Premier League, and his chance creation numbers were really good in the Championship, and he's looked decent at Fulham so far. And another kind of form in Everton player who looks quite good in the numbers is Adam Lookman. A couple of weeks ago now, I had a gander in terms of shot creating actions per 90, he was right up there. So I do wonder whether if they can get some consistency out of him and get maybe someone, because Mitrovic has been hot and cold this year, if they can just get someone finishing these chances, then they could get a few more goals. But as I said, I'm not sure if they're going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, he's a strange case, Lookman, because I think whenever I saw him for Everton, which wasn't always, wasn't that frequent, but whenever it did, he looked like a bright spark, and I always wondered why he didn't get more opportunities. And then when he goes to Leipzig, I'm thinking perfect club for a player like that. Leipzig focused on developing players for a resale value sort of thing. So I thought on a much smaller scale, I thought it'd be kind of a Sancho type buy, whereby a German club pick up a talented English forward, sell him back to the Premier League in a few years for a lot of money. But again, he's came back, didn't really work. So he's a bit of a talent that looks a lot unfulfilled, I think, probably at the minute for me.
Yeah.
But he has shown flashes this season.
Yeah. He's still just 23, so he may still come good. But I agree, that move to Germany looked like, wow, here we go. This will be the making of him type thing. And I don't know, maybe it was just something with Leipzig, like if he was maybe competing with players who were just better than him. Was he competing with the likes of Werner or something? Werner was playing out wide and there was no room for them. That's difficult, but he will be one to watch. I think if he can get some consistency to his game, then he could have a good year.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Fulham's numbers, 17th in the table at the minute. As I said, they've improved recently, but these numbers will be the season as a whole. So for expected goals per 90, they're 12th, but without penalties, they are 16th. It's probably worth noting at this point that when they do take a penalty, it's quite
the XG number goes out the window there. I think it's about 0.25 for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you should put them in the minus or something. Yeah, so if they get a penalty, don't worry about it. When it comes to the shots, they're 11th in the table for shots, which isn't bad. 14th for shots faced. This is per 90. 17th overall for expected goals against. So basically, if you remove penalties, they've kind of got the 16th best attack in a way and the 17th best defence. So they're kind of hanging on in and around being inside the bottom three worst teams in the league, really, I suppose, which is what you'd expect with a promoted team. I do think they've got tricky players. They've got players up front similar to Wolves. I would say probably Cavaliero. Who else have they got? They've got loads of little.
Don't put me on the spot.
They've got Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who played up front, funnily enough, against Manchester City. They have Luchan, obviously. They've got players who are just good at coping on their own, in a way, good at coping in isolation. They can act as outlets almost to kind of relieve pressure, but I think that they're good enough to act as outlets against Leicester, but I think against City and against Liverpool, it's probably going to take a better player to get them up the field and to kind of release pressure a little bit. I think against Liverpool, it'll just be quite relentless, and if they do decide to keep with some of the principles that they seem to have under Scott Parker, with those being, knee football, combinations, bravery on the ball, playing quite bold, sometimes building from the back. I think that's really risky against Liverpool. I don't see any of their game being suited to facing Liverpool. Any of it.
No. This is quite interesting. I agree with all that, by the way, but I hadn't really picked up on this. That I was having a little look at Liverpool's away Premier League results so far, and first and foremost, got to acknowledge who they've played. They've had, I'd say, two of their toughest away games every year in Everton and Manchester City, but the only win they've actually picked up on the road in the Premier League this season was the one against Chelsea. So it's actually 4 games now that they haven't won away in the Premier League. And as I said, it's been a really difficult run. It's been Villa, Everton, City and Brighton, but it's still a kind of return that you'd expect Liverpool to get more wins from. So this could be a game where they do need to win just to get back to kind of winning ways a little bit on the road.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'm aware of that myself, to be honest. It remains to be seen what kind of team we'll go for, considering we have Spurs midweek in what is kind of a very early season title decider in a way. I mean, at that point, I'm not sure who Spurs have got this weekend, but at that point, we'll probably be level on points, I assume, if Spurs get a win this weekend, because I expect us to be full.
So they've got... Well, they had a really easy game yesterday, didn't they? I'm just saying, I know Guy will be rolling his eyes there, our producer. But no, they've got Palace away, which it isn't a given that. Palace seems to be so hard to predict.
Yeah, they don't seem suited to facing a team like that either. I think it's no coincidence they faced West Brom, sneaked the 1-0 win. Faced Burnley, sneaked the 1-0 win. But they've demolished the likes of Southampton, thrived against the likes of City and Arsenal. So I think they are better suited when they don't have the ball, funnily enough. So it'll be interesting to see how against Palace.
He's also flagged that the other title contenders go to Everton this weekend, Chelsea, which I don't know, is that a tough game anymore? I don't know if it is, to be honest. One thing that will be interesting in that game is there's going to be home fans there, like there was at Anfield. There's going to be 2,000 home fans, and I do definitely think it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out over these next few months, having that psychological edge. Because am I right in saying that this weekend the team with West Ham messed it up, didn't they? But most teams who had home fans this season won, didn't they? It'll just be one to watch. It could just maybe level the playing field a little bit, and might be an opportunity for Chelsea to drop points.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, I am. This is kind of a bit of a opposite way that we're supposed to be going here. But I think if you look at Chelsea's numbers this season, and if you look at them as a team, I am impressed with Chelsea. I do think Chelsea will be up there.
Yeah, I do. I really do.
A very underrated squad.
Yeah. Well, they're going to lose Ziyech now. When you look at the squad depth, and you're like, they probably won't even miss him, because you got like Pulisic who will come in, and they've just got that's the key. I think that's what's going to keep them in and around it, is that they've got so many players that can come in for when other players go out injured. Because that's the problem this year. This is why Liverpool haven't been the foregone conclusion for the title that they probably looked like at the start of the season, because it's been levelled out a little bit for everybody else because they've suffered so many like injury setbacks. I feel like if that happens with Chelsea, they've got that many players that can come in at the moment that it's probably not going to impact them too much from a performance point of view, and that's why I think they could be quite serious this year.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how things play out once we get into like maybe the new year sort of thing. Obviously we've got a busy Christmas period coming up, and I think Liverpool have had, I think generally a trickier start than Chelsea.
Yeah,
Obviously we've had a lot more injuries than any other team, yet we're still joint top of the league, so I think that bodes well for the Christmas period probably. Just on Fulham, I think they've moved to a back three, like a 3-4-3 system against Leicester and City. Obviously, Leicester, City, and Liverpool, I suppose the task at hand is quite similar for each team there in terms of Fulham know they're not going to have the majority of possession. They know they're going to have to play on the break probably. Going to have to be bold when they finally do get the ball. With them playing on the break, Mitrovic hasn't been playing. Past 2 games, I think he's been on the bench because obviously he can't really counter attack. He's not really that type of player. So they've been going with a fluid front three. But I think I see the game just kind of going pretty much exactly how Liverpool wanted to. I can see Fulham trying to do what they want to do, but without having the quality to impose a game like that on Liverpool. And I can see Liverpool just kind of being in control really and scoring a few. I think one player I do think has got a bit of kryptonite really for Liverpool's game is Zambo Anguissa. I'm not sure if you've seen him this season, Dave. I remember mentioning him to you. I think it was last year for some sort of transfer pod, maybe.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, you wasn't aware of him at the time, I don't think.
No. The only well, I was just about to say you put him on the map a little bit for me, but I've only seen him in games that he's played when I've been watching Fulham. I haven't really been keeping an eye on any sort of numbers or performances so far. I mean, looks a good player, but
yeah, I mean he's quite well rounded and very very modern in the way he plays the game. Like he sweeps up a lot, wins a lot of balls, like a Kante type. But then on the ball, he's really quite press resistant as well. Like he against City, obviously the way City press when he lose the ball, he was one of the few Fulham players who was able to stay cool on the ball and get out of tight spaces. And he's kind of got like a bit of Moussa Dembele and Ndombele about him, whereby he gets out of mad situations where you wouldn't expect him to. And if you can catch his highlights from the City game, I think they're worth watching because he's a player who he's not likely to score or anything like that, but he's just a good player that I do like, and I do think is deserving of a level above Fulham. So verdict ahead of the game.
Yeah, I can't see anything but Liverpool win. To be honest with you, quite a comfortable one as well. I'm going to go 3-0.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3-0 as well. I think maybe around the hour mark onwards, I can see it probably getting to a point where Klopp gives a few of his key players a break ahead of the Spurs game. But yeah, I can see this being another one of those games where Liverpool are just a nightmare for Fulham. But I think it's at Fulham, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying it's quite a small pitch. But like Sheffield United, they're not usually ideal for a big team to go to, but I can still see us going there and dominating.
Fulham have some fans there actually as well. To be fair, just keeping on with that narrative. Not that I think Fulham are known for having the loudest and most intimidating fans, but as I said, it's just one to look out for. It could make it a little bit tougher, but I just can't see it impacting the performance of Liverpool. So yeah, I think it's going to be one way.
Right, we'll round up there. In fact, before I round up, I probably just should have kept the listeners up to date. But anyone that signed up for the Analysing Anfield newsletter, I haven't sent one out for over a month. I think it might be not my fault. We have been migrating over to a new platform, which is getting finalised today, I think. So by the time you listen to this podcast, if you've signed up, you should probably have this week's newsletter. But just letting listeners know that those will be getting restarted again, moving forward from this week. So if you haven't been receiving them, nothing to worry about. They'll be restarting again. Yeah, we'll leave it there, I think. So, Dave, thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers, everyone.